We all know Brad Armstrong. Even if you've never heard of him, you know all about him. Brad belongs to a fraternity of outsiders that have come to be one of the most important archetypes in American media over the last half-century. You know these stories. You know this character. He's Holden Caulfield, Jim Stark, Dee Fence, Walter White. He's the man who stands apart from people around him. There's usually an underlying reason. Tony's a mobster, Kay's a replicant, Arthur struggles with mental illness. But there's something else, too. A malaise that creeps in from a society that has sold these men a lie and left them bereft of purpose. Some of these characters behave in completely antisocial ways that should push the audience away, but because they serve as our point of view, we often can't help empathizing with them. Their struggles, which frequently spiral into over-the-top violence, are fraught with ennobling pathos. Sure, Bateman's a serial killer, but wouldn't you go a little crazy if you were trapped in a world of pointless materialism with no hope of ever facing consequences for your actions? Disco Elysium even lampshades this with its traditionalist route. Our beloved detective becomes, in his mind, the icebreaker, the solitary soul who can endure any suffering because in an imperfect world, suffering itself is a virtue. And then Kim yells at him because, no, it isn't. The detective is an officer of the RCM. He has no business feeling sorry for himself. The whole thing has become a big joke online. This heartbreaking scene from 2049 is basically a punchline now, even if you don't paste an amusing character over Joy's face. But regardless of what Twitter says, the archetype remains prominent, likely because very little has been done to address the underlying alienation that drives a lot of people, young men in particular, into depression and all of its terrible consequences. If after all that you still don't know him, Brad Armstrong is the protagonist of Lisa, the Painful RPG. To present a spoiler-free synopsis, Painful tells the story of a man who grew up in a terrible home and turned to a drug known as joy to forget the pain of his childhood. He lives in Olathe, a nondescript slice of Middle America, a decade or so after an event called the White Flash. We're never quite told what happened, only that because of this event, all the women are gone. In their absence, the men have really let themselves go. They scrape out meager existences in mud huts, ruined buildings, and literal caves. With no women, there's no future. And so the men have nothing to aspire to. Life is cheap when extinction is certain, and what's left of society is slouching toward a non-stop WrestleMania. Pointless violence with Mad Max overtones. It's in this miserable milieu that Brad, a man with nothing left to live for, finds a baby. A girl, who grows up to spark an adventure that has been covered ad nauseum by other video essayists. The game released in 2014 to massive critical acclaim, paving the way for a new generation of indie RPGs that blended nostalgia and tragedy with horror. Fandom inevitably follows this kind of success, but for some reason, this time it wasn't limited to posting OCs and fanfiction. People started making fan games. A lot of them. And while that's not completely unheard of, some of these were very good, sometimes rivaling the work they were based on and achieving a lasting popularity that stretches beyond the boundaries of mere fandom. Austin Jorgensen has even given them the thumbs up. According to the developer himself, these games are canon. So we arrive at Lisa the Hopeful, a 2018 fan game by a developer known as Taco Salad. But don't worry if you're not familiar with the original. You've already been told all you need to know. Nothing in this game spoils anything in Painful, and the two mostly feature different casts and locations. 4 men are on a road trip across Olathe. Or they were, until they ran out of gas. This is Rodriguez's gang, if you could call a middle-aged cowboy and his 3 hapless goons a gang. Word has gotten out that somewhere in Olathe, a girl has been spotted, the first since the White Flash all those years ago. And now, every red-blooded man with a set of wheels and fuel to burn is out looking for her. But the boys forgot to fill the tank before everybody piled in, so their adventure has stalled out. Rodriguez stays with the car, a priceless item in this day and age, and sends his 3 flunkies out on foot to find some gasoline. Beltboy the Bullet Waster is nominally second in command, mostly because his partners, Lanks and Cyclops, are utterly lacking in leadership qualities. Beltboy's a bit of a dumbass, but his Liberty spikes and leather jacket lend him at least a little wasteland credibility. A wounded man immediately invites the player to try out some kind of pain-related difficulty. Pain mode is a staple of Lisa games, generally featuring fewer resources, more difficult enemies, and sometimes slight story differences. We're gonna skip it for now, but don't worry, we'll be back. Area 1 is a dry desert, mostly devoid of people. We are way out in backwater Olathe, a particularly lonely stretch of the countryside, but even here can be found posters depicting a young girl along with the text, "The world can be saved. Find her." Fans of the series will recognize this poster and the girl it depicts. She's Buddy, Brad Armstrong's adopted daughter. The entirety of Lisa the Painful is spent chasing after this girl in an attempt to save her from the hordes of creeps, perverts, and losers chasing after her. Losers like our boys here. In typical Lisa fashion, these losers get jumped by some jagoff pretty much immediately. We won't be going through every fight, but this one gives us a chance to talk about the mechanics a little. Beltboy comes equipped with a literal arsenal. Instead of an attack command, he has Shoot 'em, which opens a combo window. Here, we can press any combination of 4 buttons. Each immediately executes its own animation, and when certain combinations are entered, Beltboy will do a special move listed under the gunplay menu. This is one of the primary mechanics in the Lisa franchise, and it's easy to see why just about every fan game has carried it forward. It feels really, really good. That's certainly helped by the crunchy sound and frantic animations. Every time you hit a command, Beltboy flies all over the place, spraying bullets in every direction, and if you've made the correct inputs, at the end of it all you're treated to a more involved attack animation, plus whatever damage and add-on effects the technique applies. It's a reimagining of Sabin's blitz attacks from Final Fantasy VI, but where Sabin would simply fail to act if your stubby 8-year-old fingers flubbed the input, here you'll still do partial damage. It's a great way to convey the wild kinetics of a brawl, which can be difficult in a turn-based RPG. Cyclops works pretty much the same way, though his techniques cost TP rather than SP. TP starts at a low value and builds as you attack, while SP functions much more like mana in a traditional RPG. This means that Cyclops becomes more capable as the fight goes on, while Beltboy is relying on a limited resource to stay effective. Lanks rounds out the roster as the 3rd member, and he doesn't use the combo system. His standard attack is a pathetic slap that does a tiny fraction of the damage the other 2 can put out. But that's okay. By clapping for his buddies, he can restore their health, allowing them to stay in the fight. With Yogurt Masters defeated, exploration can get underway in earnest. Eventually, after scrounging up some loot and fending off a few more lowlifes, the gang takes a break. There's a seed of doubt lurking under all the enthusiasm. Nobody questions whether the girl is real, nor is there any doubt of what they'll do if they find her. But it's easily been a decade since the White Flash. Lanks and Beltboy never got the chance to score before all the women vanished, and Beltboy, coming dangerously close to self-awareness, points out that the girl in the poster looks a little young. The next morning, the 3 spot a sign advertising gasoline. Barrels of it looks like, over there, by all the fresh blood. Predictably, they get surprised and beaten unconscious by Dixon Bismuth, who leaves them for dead at the bottom of a pit. This is the hideout of the engine enthusiasts, a gang that aims to dominate the roads with an army of vehicles, many of which they've likely acquired with obvious traps like these. Their leader, Gordy Golden, informs the boys that they're being held for ransom. 500 girly mags, which are the de facto currency here in Olathe. Rodriguez is gonna be pissed. Cyclops is too hard-headed to stay put. He smashes through the rubble blocking the exit, and the 3 fight their way through the gang's hideout. Exploring the factory, the boys soon discover that the gang may be more interested in cars than they initially let on. Like, really interested in cars. They even catch one of the enthusiasts in flagrante, but something has apparently gone horribly wrong. His body has been bloated and stretched to awful proportions, and his mask, still strapped to his head, has become embedded in his flesh. Mutation is one of the side effects of joy, usually coming on after prolonged use or in moments of extreme trauma. Joy mutants gain terrific strength but lose nearly all of their intelligence, usually becoming fixated on a single object of their desire. For Eddie here, that was his car. We'll just, leave him to it. After fighting their way to the top, the crew confronts Gordy Golden in his office. As they expected, he's not really after the girl, but he's not about to let the boys off the hook for trashing his headquarters. Gordy is the first mandatory boss fight in the game, but there's not much to him. Just keep Lanks healing and he'll go down eventually. The fight ends and Beltboy is able to score a jerry can of gas. but he's distracted from his celebration by a terrible commotion outside. Some kind of explosion shatters several windows and rattles the building to its foundation. Outside, they find the remains of a terrible battle. The enthusiasts' cars are all missing or destroyed, and dead welders litter the area. It's bad luck for the enthusiasts, but at least the battle covered the boys' escape. They pick their way back down the hill, stopping to chat with an incredibly creepy old shopkeeper named Reginald. Beneath a newly painted flag bearing a red heart, they meet a man in a hoodie who explains that a very dangerous gang has come to Backwater Olathe in search of the girl, and things are about to get very bad. Their graffiti is everywhere, and posters of the girl have been defaced with a warning. The girl belongs to the Lovelies. Interfere and die. Signed, with love, Heart. The way back down is a steep incline, past another mutant named Corny. Not long ago, this joy dealer was spiraling into depression thanks to a lack of excitement in his life. It would seem that the Lovelies finally gave him more than he could handle, and he mutated after being left for dead. Corny is the first real wall that the game throws at the player. He has a tremendous amount of HP and hits like a truck, which can be intimidating. The trick with joy mutants is generally to get them to waste turns. They often waste plenty of time already crying or coughing up blood, and with a little help from the player they'll have trouble consistently dealing damage. Here we want to use Lanks' irritating poke, which will inflict the piss status. Characters who are pissed will attack randomly instead of using their usual techniques, and they can hit their allies or even themselves. This status also sharply reduces their accuracy and base damage, so it's a great way to buy time. Lanks at this point has really begun to come into his own. He's still extremely fragile and relies on limited SP reserves, but his fireballs do significant damage, and with a debuff and heals, he's always got something useful to be doing. Cyclops sort of follows the opposite trajectory. If Lanks is the nerd coming out of his shell, Cyclops is the star athlete who peaked in high school. And while he never completely falls off, his effectiveness as a tank rapidly dwindles, while his damage output struggles to keep pace. That's not to say he's bad, he's certainly the most reliable party member, but it's rare that he'll surprise you. With Corny dead, there's nothing in the way of Rodriguez in the car except the lovely boys. And what's left of Rodriguez. The Lovely Boys are a gang of perverts with only one objective, and news of a girl being spotted has got them practically foaming at the mouth. According to their leader Hart, Rodriguez didn't want to hand over his car, so now his head's on a stake. Lanks calls Hart a murderer and gets beaten to the ground for interrupting. Beltboy tries to make peace, but Hart's not interested. He has the boys corralled into the back of a truck, and the Lovelies roll out. Backwater Olathe usually isn't this turbulent. Sure, it's the apocalypse with people killing each other over nothing, but it wasn't as hardcore as the other parts of the region. Hoodie Guy was right, the Lovelies are a different breed. Once Lanks awakens, the three get a moment to talk. Everyone's naturally pretty bummed about Rodriguez, but Cyclops reminds them that they've been together for a long time now, and it had to end someday. The truck eventually comes to a stop, and one of the Lovelies, Craig Fuchs, tells Beltboy and Cyclops to get out so that he can be alone with Lanks. The boys are unarmed and heavily outnumbered. All they can do is comply. Beltboy's a little too naive to put two and two together, and Cyclops isn't about to explain what Craig wants, so instead, the two try to think of an escape plan as muffled screaming echoes from the truck. Lanks rejoins the group after several minutes, and Fuchs tells Beltboy that it's his turn. Still confused, Beltboy steps into the truck, whereupon Fuchs closes the door and advances. A deeply uncomfortable battle begins. The shoot 'em command is unavailable, and gunplay's techniques have been replaced. Cornered and without his arsenal, Beltboy can only struggle, bite, and cry. But our guy is more dangerous than he looks, and unexpectedly, he manages to beat Craig to death with his bare hands. The other Lovelies laugh as Beltboy comes running out of the truck, not realizing what all that noise really was. Before anyone can spot the body, he finds his friends, and the three narrowly escape from the camp. With that nastiness behind them, the four decide that the only thing to do is keep looking for the girl. It'll all be worth it if they can just get to her first. The experience has left Lanks with a nasty cut on his head and the depression status, which will greatly debuff him till the group's next rest. But nobody seems interested in talking. Instead, the three press on through the swamp, passing a small community and some aggressively hallucinogenic mushrooms. That night, Lanks struggles to ask an important question. Are we really doing the right thing? He won't come out and say it, but it's clear that his recent experience at the hands of the Lovelies has given him a new perspective on their plans for the girl. Until now, it had been a foregone conclusion that this was what everyone wanted. Only now does anyone dare voice the idea that maybe it isn't what she wants. Cyclops aggressively shuts him down. Who cares what she thinks, idiot? She's the last woman in Olathe. Her purpose is to save the world, whether she wants to or not. Lanks doesn't have the backbone to stand up to his friend, and Beltboy remains quiet on the matter. Fighting their way deeper into the swamp, the boys pass a twisted mutant before becoming exposed to the spores from a mushroom. Suddenly that's no mutant at all, but a little red-headed girl. This is Pinhead, a mutant that's totally content to mind its own business if undisturbed. Pinhead deals terrific damage with its disembowel and slice attacks, and can shut your party down by inflicting the scared condition. The best way to deal with this optional battle is to end it as quickly as possible. Firebombs are great for high HP enemies like mutants, as the burning condition scales with the target's health. The only reward for all the trouble is 2 joy and some experience. Things get a little funkier further into the swamp. The spores have a stronger effect, inverting the screen, which seems to make Beltboy partially confused about the effects of gravity. This allows him to jump much higher and farther than normal, turning this area into something of a navigation puzzle. Todd Kentucky is another optional fight here, and thanks to the fact that you can only reach him while tripping, he can be one of the hardest battles so far. For the first 4 rounds, the boys are practically useless thanks to the status effects inflicted by the mushrooms. The trick here is to lay down whatever status effects you can and just try to heal through it. The dumbass horns are the reward for defeating Todd. These are the first ass weapons in the game. Ass weaponry is very powerful but comes with severe drawbacks, changing how the user plays in ways that aren't always clear at a glance. The dumbass horns greatly improve Cyclops' performance as a tank, but saddle him with the melting status effect, which saps 15% of his maximum health every round. If Lanks can keep on top of healing him, they can be an incredibly useful item in the right situation. The boys press on, delirious, until Beltboy stumbles across a patch of blood on the ground. His smile fades as a red-haired girl emerges from the trees calling his name. His real name, Benny. She reminds him of a promise he's broken. That he said they'd be friends forever, but when the White Flash took her, he stayed behind. Flashback to another scene, Wally Burger. Beltboy finds himself talking to 2 wagies in paper hats, Liam and Clyde. Of course, they're talking about women. It quickly comes out that Beltboy is hung up on a girl who only sees him as a friend. His buddies make fun of him for being friend-zoned until their manager, Rodriguez, pokes his head in to tell them to get back to work. His head. Right. The dream has become a nightmare. The girl stands on an island in an ocean of blood, mocking Benny for being such an easy mark. Awakening in a shack, Beltboy discovers that for once, something good has happened. A helpful gang showed up and rescued them from the deepest part of the swamp. This is the Kegger Krew's hideout, a shanty town built around a brewery where everyone makes booze and gets wasted all day. It doesn't seem like a bad way to deal with the apocalypse, and except for a few belligerent drunks and a mutant swimming around in one of the vats, these guys are cool. Navigating the place is a little hazardous, but the boys need to find the boss so that they can thank him and get out of here. There's a guy in the gift shop who will trade a random collection of items for the weird-ass arsenal, Beltboy's ass weapon. It's probably the most straightforward of all ass weapons, as it simply reduces Beltboy's attack and increases his magic attack. Most of Beltboy's damage comes from his physical attack stat, however his finger gun attacks use magic. Additionally, they have the water element, which is super effective against certain enemies. This makes the weird-ass arsenal best for use in specific fights. In others, the high MP cost of his finger gun attacks can be prohibitive, while the damage isn't really any better. On the uppermost level they find Coldstein Kegger, who invites the boys to share a drink with him. Under any other circumstances that might be awesome, but Beltboy explains that he's got somewhere to be, and he makes the mistake of mentioning the girl. The Kegger Krew are trashed 24/7, and so they've not heard the news until this very instant, or if they have, they've forgotten. Word of a girl in Olathe gets everybody's blood up, and without warning, a brawl breaks out. This fight isn't too bad. The real challenge here is that there are 4 opponents and a lot of incoming damage. There's a delicate balance to be struck here between dealing enough damage to take out the men on either side of Coldstein, while healing and buffing enough to avoid getting knocked out. Once the crew is down to 2, things are a lot more manageable. With Coldstein down for the count, the boys are able to get outside and barricade the way behind them. There's a truck here, and Lanks knows how to hotwire it, but it's slow going, and the rest of the Keggers seem to have figured out that something's up. The truck is already full, so Cyclops grabs Beltboy's jerry can and splashes the fuel all over the side of the building. Beltboy hesitates, realizing what he intends, but Cyclops tells him that brutal or not, it's all they've got. The building goes up in flames along with the remainder of the Kegger Krew. The first thing Cyclops does as they drive away from the war crime they've just committed is blame women for his actions. Beltboy tries to bring up Rodriguez, but Cyclops shuts him down, insulting both of his friends in the process. Another dream. Beltboy, Benny, is a child, walking through a playground in pre-Flash Olathe. He's meeting up with the red-headed girl, who's hatched a plan for the pair to run away together. It's a little kid plan. They don't have anywhere to go, but she wants to get away from her overly strict parents. As for Benny, nobody ever pays him any mind at all, so why not run away? They share a promise, friends forever. And then Lanks crashes the truck. As they get their bearings, the boys discover that they've arrived at a small town near the Sports Dome, where one of the only forms of entertainment left in Olathe is filmed for broadcast. Sports! What's more, there's an open tournament coming up, with the girl as the grand prize. Well, isn't that convenient? They head through a nearby tunnel en route to the dome, stopping in at a shop on the way. Hey, isn't that little merchant dude, Reginald? Oh no. He was a joy addict? Reginald is a pretty standard mutant fight. Hit him with poison or burning if possible, try to shut his offense down with status effects, and keep everyone topped up on health. He hits hard. Eventually, the boys reach the other side of the tunnel, but the way to the dome is blocked by the sexy mans. You can pay these guys off for 30 mags, but it's worth fighting them just to hear the music. Eugenio is a terror in this fight, capable of serious crowd control while his buddies dish out the damage. You need healing almost every round, and Lanks isn't always available, so this is a good time to break into the jerky stockpile. Finally, it's the Sports Dome. Up front, Tanner, Texas, and Rufus Berger are preparing for the tournament. They look pretty serious, but they're polite enough to chat with. Rufus explains that his group was after the girl, who was also being pursued by some sort of Red Skull army. That doesn't describe the Lovelies at all. He must mean the Rando army, who feature prominently in Lisa the Painful. So there are two armies chasing after her, and somehow the sports guys got her first? Maybe the sportsters have her, maybe they don't. But there's no way to find out sitting around outside. And so the boys sign up for the tournament, hoping for a chance to snoop around and figure out the truth. Something does seem a bit odd about all this sports. For one, nobody knows exactly what game is being played, and there are a bunch of monster cages in the back, full of angry mutants. Is that normal? A little eavesdropping reveals the fact that somebody named Brady has been killed, and the sportsters are trying to come up with an excuse for the sports king. But before the boys can learn anything more, management shows up. It's almost time for the show. The boys have a brief pep talk in their room. Their only hope now is to win whatever the hell this competition is going to be, and then hope that the sportsters weren't lying. Sensing that something's still bothering his friend, Beltboy decides to try talking to Lanks about what happened with the Lovelies. "We're your friends," Beltboy says. "You can talk to us." But Lanks disagrees. It's precisely because they're his friends that he can't open up to them, he says. That doesn't sit well with Beltboy, but what can he say? Their friendship is a bond rooted in violence and verbal abuse. When have these three ever been able to open up to each other? Cyclops warns Beltboy that he'd better not chicken out and run off. He knows Beltboy doesn't want this as much as the other two. Beltboy responds that no, he doesn't. That even if they win, they'll have all of Olathe after them for as long as they have the girl. He gets some pushback from Cyclops, but he's undeterred. He tells him that he cares more about his friends than some girl he's never met. Cyclops is taken aback at the admission. Beltboy reassures Lanks that they'll get through this together and then heads off to check out the venue. There's a shop here that sells badass bands. These greatly improve Lanks' physical attack, but prevent him from using any of his skills. It's certainly an interesting gimmick, but not one that I was able to find a good use for. Beltboy takes the opportunity to scope out the competition. There are some familiar faces here, including the last of the engine enthusiasts and the Kegger Krew. Tanner's gang warns Beltboy that the Lovelies may be inbound. We'd better wrap this up quick. Sports, as it turns out, is a two-team stadium deathmatch. There is a ball, and destroying it will win the match, but the teams can also just kill each other. The second match of the day is against the enthusiasts. Nico and Dixon are probably only alive because Beltboy's gang pummeled them too hard for them to go out and get murdered by the Lovely Boys. There's nothing new in these fights, but these enemies were mostly encountered solo before, meaning that it's a game of deciding whether to prioritize a kill to get some breathing room, or just to try to race the ball down. Either seems to work as long as you're paying attention. Benny finds himself in the uncomfortable position of being scolded by someone else's father. It looks like he and the red-headed girl got caught trying to run away, and now there's hell to pay for it. The scolding escalates to physical threats, and the man takes on an uncomfortably possessive tone that quickly becomes extremely inappropriate. Benny, still a child, could only stammer out an apology as the man heaps humiliation on him and sends him away, dejected. This has been eating at Beltboy for a long time. It might be the white flash that finally took her away, but this was the moment that Benny broke his promise. Just a few days before, it was friends forever. Now he's forced to walk away, unable to save her from an abusive home. Day 2 begins with Beltboy trying to get Cyclops to quit the tournament. Their lives are worth more than this. But Cyclops won't back down. "We're not pushovers like that dumb old geezer Rodriguez," he says, before remembering out loud that Lanks is, in fact, a pushover. Beltboy calls him out on this and then gives Lanks a few words of encouragement. There's a little pile of joy under the bed in one of the recently vacated rooms. If people are doping, this competition's going to be a lot harder than it seemed. First up, it's Team Rainbow, except Blue, a trio of townies who are tougher than they look. Beltboy's Intimidate skill really comes in handy in these matches. It can completely shut multiple enemies down for a turn or two, and with Radical Pose constantly regenerating SP, the cost isn't half as steep as it seems. Team Cal Poly Pomona Green is composed of the last keggers around, and they're thirsty for some revenge. They wind up being one of the easier fights despite being so deep in the tournament though, and in short order the boys are back in their room, relaxing after another victory. Beltboy again expresses his doubts. Rodriguez's gang was never a serious outfit, just a couple of goons trying to get by. Now they're up against real killers. Aren't their lives worth more than this? Lanks starts to agree with him, but Cyclops cuts them off, infuriated. He hurls insults, questions Benny's sexuality, and tells Liam to just get over what happened to him. Beltboy pulls off an impressive feat of diplomacy here, telling Cyclops that he's acting like a horny kid, but that he and Lanks are going to stick it out and stay in the fight, if only because it's important to Cyclops. Things seem smoothed over for the moment. Team Mexican Pink is, as anticipated, quite dangerous. Will Nutter has high defense and the trash talk ability, meaning that he'll be crowd controlling our team while tanking for his. But that hardly matters because Beltboy's got a secret weapon. He won't tell the others, but he's taking Joy. Joy is the little blue pill that makes you feel nothing, and in combat it gives you a tremendous advantage. For about 8 turns, Beltboy will have his crit rate and defenses doubled. This makes most of the fights in the game much, much easier. Yeah, there are risks, but dying's a risk too. The group is falling apart without Rodriguez, and this is just the beginning. It's a matter of survival. Team Prussian Blue hits hard and packs stuns and knockdowns, but they don't put up a physical wall quite like the first match did. And with the Joy buzz going, Beltboy rips through them. Once they go down, the way is cleared for Team Chartreuse to enter the finals. The last pep talk. Beltboy tells Cyclops that the only reason that he's doing this is for him, and whatever happens, the group needs to look out for each other. Cyclops waves him off. The girl is what matters. Saving the world is what matters. Who cares if we live or die? Beltboy gives Lanks a final word of encouragement, and then it's off to the finals. The Sportsters have the home field advantage, and they're quite tough, essentially a more powerful version of Team Mexican Pink. Beltboy is still jazzed on Joy, however, and he easily destroys the ball, winning the match. Judging by the announcer's confusion, it seems that this upset was unplanned. Enter the Sports King, accusing the boys of being a bunch of dirty, rotten cheaters. Did they cheat? Is Joy cheating? Some of the other contestants were definitely using it, and how would they even know? No, this isn't about Joy. Clearly the king just didn't anticipate that his beloved Sportsters would lose. Also, not for nothing, but Beltboy wearing that dumbass grin and remaining totally silent during this tense scene makes me laugh. The king attacks, along with his footman Ashley and a ferocious mutant named Babe the Tooth. There are a few tricks to this battle. If you kill the Sportster holding the chain first, Babe breaks loose and will sometimes attack the king. If you kill Babe first, the footman runs off, leaving the king alone. As Babe has twice the HP of either of the other combatants, it's usually easiest to kill Ashley first, though your mileage may vary. The battle is a whirlwind of horns and bullets. Every fighter's at the top of their game. Lanks' enrapturing speech move is a massive buff to attack and critical hit rate, and as the beast goes down, the gang for once begins to feel like they're on top of the situation. The king begs for his life, explaining that the girl escaped, which put him in a terrible position. If he'd simply announced that the grand prize had run away, the Sports Dome's reputation would be ruined. To save face, he had to stake everything on the home team winning the tournament. But when that didn't go to plan, what choice did he have? The sound of engines outside heralds the arrival of trouble. Before the boys can decide what to do with the king, an army arrives, unopposed thanks to the fact that stadium security is out looking for the girl. The Lovelies pile in, and soon a familiar voice booms through the field. It's Hart, and he's rather unimpressed by the Sports King. He informs him that the Sportsters have been wiped out, and he asks where the girl has gone. The moment the king says she's escaped, one of the Lovelies, Lud Blaster, drops down from the stands, accidentally discharging his AK into the king's face. As if bored by the whole affair, Hart disinterestedly quizzes the boys about the girl's whereabouts. When they fail to provide a satisfying answer, he seems ready to move on. At the last moment, however, he stops to consider that they killed one of his men. He reaches a decision. One will be taken, one will be killed, and one will be set free. Beltboy works up the nerve to tell Hart that it isn't going to happen, and without a word, Lud shoots him in the face. Cyclops awakens to find Lanks gone and Benny lying in a pool of blood. All Cyclops has now is anger. He listened to all of Beltboy's BS about looking out for each other, and now look what's happened. Benny's dead and Lanks is in the hands of some truly monstrous people. He steps forward, ready to start tracking Lanks down. But there's a terrible sound behind him. Benny's voice. In his last moments, the Joy has taken hold, twisting Beltboy into a monstrous mutant. Benny is dangerous, but he can't dish out enough damage to shut down the charger. He eventually goes down, rasping out 2 final words. Friends forever. Cyclops takes Benny's kerchief, finds a car, and settles on a decision. He's going to save Lanks and pummel Hart into the ground. The Lovelies are easy to follow thanks to the trail of destruction and graffiti they leave everywhere, and soon Cyclops is upon them. The convoy is slowly making its way through a mountain tunnel. Fighting through the entire gang would be a tall order, but alone, Cyclops might be able to outpace them just by going over the mountain. Benny's kerchief is a reminder that these monsters killed one of the last 2 people in the world who cared about Clyde. It's a strong motivator, almost doubling his attack power, which he's going to need to get through this alone. There are wolves all over the mountain, and the odd Lovely boy, separated from his group. Cyclops goes through them all like wet paper. At one point, he even runs into a familiar face. It's Yogurt Masters, come back for a rematch. In his first appearance, Yogurt was a pushover. Now he's a major threat. He can change stances to regenerate, use dangerous flame techniques that exploit an oiled-up Cyclops' weakness to fire, and deal an obnoxious amount of damage with his martial arts. Cyclops smashes past him, collecting a stat-boosting martial arts scroll and clearing the way to climb further up the mountain. There's something strange at the peak, the ruins of a little suburban neighborhood. What the hell is that? And outside, is that a woman? She's dead. Not far away lies a man in a lab coat with most of his head missing. A security camera watches over the scene. Further along the path, it's more of the same. More fake houses, a hole dug into the floor that leads down into an underground research facility. Joy was, at one time, an experimental super soldier drug. The creeps are its failed products, twisted monsters who crave violence. They seem especially hostile to women, and it's likely that if Joy wasn't the sole cause, it was at least partially to blame for the current state of Olathe. At some point, one of the researchers involved in the project went rogue, becoming enamored with the twisted mutants that a variant of the drug produced. This was Dr. Yato, and he wanted to make Olathe his personal playground. This story's explored a bit more in Lisa the Painful and the Joyful, but that's about the gist of it. This lab would appear to belong to his associates, who were keeping 12 test subjects down here. But for what purpose? Notes scattered around the place reveal that the test subjects escaped. Half of them were killed by security, but the rest appear to have overpowered their captors. That event was probably the end of whatever was going on here. Most of this is over Cyclops' head, and it's doubtful he even cares all that much. As far as he's concerned, he just needs to find a path through the other side of the mountain. Down in the depths of the basement, he encounters the most terrible sight yet. This mutant was a woman. Amy is a brick wall. She has nearly 30,000 hit points and can inflict depression, tanking Cyclops' stats. It's difficult to meaningfully CC her as Cyclops, and he just doesn't have the bulk to keep up with her damage output. What's worse, she inflicts the scared condition, which can keep him from attacking entirely. It winds up playing out like the inverse of a normal mutant fight, with the player losing many turns and struggling to dish out burst damage in the few openings they have. At last, with the help of many consumables, she falls. Cyclops emerges into daylight and picks up the trail of the Lovelies. Not far ahead, he finds their camp, walks right up, and tells the first group he finds that they're all about to die. This is a difficult fight. It's sometimes possible to knock 1 or 2 of these guys down, but they put out so much damage that keeping up with CC is a losing battle. The best way to go seems to be to take out Richie Headsman on the right, as the other 2 don't deal damage as often as he does. With the 3 Lovelies dead, Cyclops crawls into the back of a nearby truck and collapses, exhausted from all the fighting. Before long, the engine starts up as the convoy gets moving again. Cyclops leaps from truck to truck. It's a Road Warrior-style slaughter as he charges through one lovely after another. Hart himself eventually climbs out to put a stop to all of this. Just as the showdown is about to begin, the fighters are distracted by the sound of a trumpet? The way is blocked by what looks like a gigantic pile of mutants. Hart gives the order to stop the convoy, but it comes too late. Cyclops awakens amid the wreckage of the convoy. There are dead mutants everywhere, but the gang couldn't have done all this. And what's this sword stuck in the ground? Finding this here gives us an idea of where in the timeline this game is taking place. This is Buddy's sword, stuck here at or near the end of Lisa the Hopeful. The Lovelies have seemingly arrived at the site of the game's final confrontation not long after it happened. This would explain all the destruction. Up ahead, a trio of wounded Lovelies block the way. Injured as they are, they're no match for Cyclops. But he's too late. Lanks lies dead in the dirt, completely mangled either by the crash or by his captors. Cyclops blames himself for all of this, telling himself as he buries his last friend that he can still fix everything. He presses on through the wasteland, eventually coming across a man with a truck. This is one of Tanner's boys, who has received the order from his boss, who apparently survived the massacre at the sports dome, to give Cyclops a ride the rest of the way. Tanner's a badass, but he has a sense of honor. Beltboy's gang won the tournament. The prize shouldn't go to some murderer who just showed up and wrecked everything. It's night when Cyclops begins the final trek, and only a few Lovelies remain to block the path. Unfortunately, the last of the group are also the toughest, and what's worse, most of them are on Joy. When defeated, they twist into unnatural shapes, becoming mutants that are even tougher to get through. But there's no stopping the Charger, and finally, he catches up to Hart and the remaining 4 Lovelies, who are picking the lock on the girl's hiding place. Hart taunts Cyclops in a deep monotone, seemingly unperturbed by the losses his gang has suffered. This man is a long-time Joy user, and it's given him an uncanny attitude, a sense of calm that rarely breaks. He considers Cyclops' rage and determination and concludes that he has the right stuff to join the Lovelies, even making a pass at him in the process. Cyclops responds by effortlessly killing the last of Hart's men. There's no battle, he just goes through them in a sudden flash of violence. Hart shrugs, pops a joy, and steps up to take Cyclops down. There are no tricks with Hart. There's no CCing him, no weaknesses to exploit. He deals a lot of damage all the time, and sometimes that comes with huge debuffs. It's time to throw everything we have at him. Both men tear each other to pieces. Cyclops struggles to keep going as blood spills and bones break, and cracks begin to appear in Hart's mask. It could go either way, until... The mask shreds away as Hart becomes a mutant, armed with massive jaws and one swiping claw. Curls of red hair frame a distorted face as tears run from his rolling eyes. Joy mutants lose their humanity and forever live with a single feeling. For Hart, it's the desperate need to be loved. The battle ends, but not without cost. Clyde has lost his helmet and he's badly wounded, but there's nothing left of the Lovelies now. Cyclops has literally beaten Hart into a pulp. He limps through the door, making his way to the back of the building where, against all odds, he finds her. The girl. She's real. She asks him what he's come here for, but isn't impressed by his answer. From her point of view, Cyclops isn't any different from the Lovelies. She warns him once to step aside and let her leave, but Clyde won't hear it. Unfortunately, the Charger has overplayed his hand. He's too beaten down from the fight with Hart to do anything, and this girl, this woman, is no pushover. She strikes him with surprisingly skilled movements and tells him once again to stand down, but he won't listen. There's no stopping the Charger. Clyde collapses on the floor and the woman leaves without another word. Olathe is full of fuck-ups and nobodies. People go on and on about how they have to save humanity. Do they even think about what they're trying to save? In the end, maybe it's a blessing that the scum of the earth are going to be cleansed away. It can't end like this, can it? Let's go back a bit, to just before the fight with Hart. Cyclops can take joy, just like Beltboy did. What then? Maybe he can make it through in good enough shape to get the girl and a happy ending. If we've had Cyclops use joy at any point in the game, even once, things do go a little differently. At first it's all familiar, the confrontation with Hart, the battle, but then, midway through, something changes. We see the tangled guts, signifying the joy taking effect. But it isn't Hart who mutates. Clyde sees red for a moment and simply bites off Hart's entire head in one big chomp. Twisted into a serpentine form, he makes his way in to find the girl. There's only one thing on his mind now. She recoils at the sight of him. She's strong, but not strong enough for this. This time, Clyde gets what he wants. We get a different post-credits scene, and finally, our girl is given a name. She is called 5, and it's revealed that she was one of the test subjects at the secret laboratory, and probably the one who led the escape. This means there are at least a few other women out there, and despite the terrible fate 5 met, maybe there's still a shred of hope. All along, we've been led to believe that this girl was going to be Buddy, a young child whose terrible ordeal plays out in painful and joyful. 5 is a new character. She seems older, and we shouldn't be surprised to learn that she's no damsel in distress. There can be no such thing in this world. The weak would never have survived this long. Now, it's easy to say that Cyclops got what he deserved, or to write him off as a big dumb jerk. And let's be clear, he did, and he was, but I think there's more to it. A common theme among the characters in Hopeful is that they lack the emotional tools to deal with the situations they find themselves in. There's no doubt in my mind that Clyde loved his friends, that he wanted what was best for him, and I'm pretty sure that at the end of the day, despite the horrible actions he was willing to undertake, he did legitimately want to save the world. Of course, he wanted to get laid too, whether 5 was into it or not, and there's no getting around the fact that that's an evil goal, but given that it's something that every man in the story has in common, it might be worth asking how we got here. What else could have been done differently? Keeping that in mind, we'll turn back the clock. The boys have just arrived at the sports dome and signed up for the tournament. Beltboy and Lanks are still alive. Nobody knows that the girl has escaped from the Sportsters, and this time, Beltboy won't be taking any joy. Beltboy tries to talk to Lanks about what happened with the Lovelies, but just as before, Lanks can't open up. "It's because you're my friends that I can't," he says. "I know you guys." This time, Beltboy presses him on it. He can't help if Lanks doesn't open up to him, but he still can't get anywhere. Talking to Cyclops, he takes a different approach. This time he disagrees with him. "Of course I want the girl," he says. "We're all doing this together." The first two matches are easy victories for the boys. Again, Beltboy dreams of his childhood friend. And again, it's not a happy dream. Talking to Lanks, instead of reassuring him, Beltboy challenges him to do better, telling him that he can set aside his doubts and improve himself if he works at it. He smooths things over with Cyclops, assuring him that it'll all be fine, and begins to believe that maybe, if they pull this off, they really can save the world. And anyway, somebody's gonna get the girl. Might as well be the boys. At least they won't hurt her any more than they have to. Lanks, meanwhile, seems to have taken Beltboy's speech to heart. He stumbles over his words as he tries to explain what went down with Craig in the truck. "Something bad happened to me," he says. "How do I move on from that?" Beltboy realizes that he doesn't have a good answer, but that doesn't stop him from extending all the support he can. "You didn't deserve what happened," he says, and while Lanks is going to have to figure out for himself how to move on, he can count on Beltboy being with him every step of the way. This may be the first time the boys have really been able to open up to each other. Lanks is left speechless, but that hardly matters. It's enough to know that his friends are truly standing by him. Spirits are high after the semifinals, and this time the gang's truly ready to stand together, no matter what happens. We repeat the fight with the Sportsters and the Sports King, and just as before, the Lovelies make an appearance. And just as before, when Beltboy stands up to Hart, he gets shot in the face for his trouble. It looks like we're headed for a repeat of prior events, but suddenly Cyclops speaks up. "Take me," he says. Hart is surprised, but Cyclops makes a good case. He's more like the Lovelies than Lanks, and he'd be more useful to them in any case. He wants to join, not as a prisoner, but a useful member of the gang. And so Cyclops leaves with the Lovelies, and Lanks is all alone. He begins to leave the stadium when he hears a terrible sound. Benny's voice. Things don't look so good for Beltboy, but for now, he's on his feet. The two men decide to go over the mountain together, trying to reach the girl before Hart. Lanks receives a massive upgrade at this point. The Persevere skill effectively makes him invincible, and Triple Fireball can deal thousands of damage and inflict the burning status. He's also an effective healer, and his buffs turn Beltboy into a killing machine. The pair fight their way over the mountain, through the laboratory, past Amy, and take the trio of Lovelies at the truck. But Benny's running out of road. He sits down to rest in the back, seemingly aware that his time is growing short. He gives a few words of encouragement, telling Liam that he'll get through this, and closes his eye. Lanks gets in the cab and starts the truck up, driving after the convoy in an attempt to catch up to Hart. Suddenly, the truck ahead of Lanks screeches to a halt as the sound of a trumpet can be heard in the distance. He awakens, having been ejected from the vehicle. Where's Benny? Searching the wreckage, he comes across Clyde, mortally wounded from the crash. Clyde tells him that he shouldn't be here, that he only volunteered to protect Liam. He tells him that Benny's dead and that he needs to move on, to go live his life somewhere away from all this. But that's not what Liam's gonna do. He buries Clyde and makes a promise. He's gonna finish what the boys started and get the girl. Lanks is a wrecking ball at this point. His fireballs are fueled by emotion and he's feeling more of it than ever. The Lovelies don't stand a chance as the man on fire makes his way to Hart. Taking a rest, Lanks talks to himself, stating that he's going to do the right thing and show that he's not useless. Liam finally comes out of his shell as he confronts Hart. He's here for the girl, he says, and that was going to be enough, but now he's decided to kill all the Lovelies as well. And boy does he make good on his promise, burning 4 men to ash with a single attack. Compared to Cyclops' battle, this one's a cakewalk. Hart simply does not have what it takes to stop Lanks. Liam laughs, shocked that he's actually pulled it off. He calls out to his fallen friends and heads inside. But the victory didn't come without cost. He stumbles when he enters the ruined building and is too exhausted to get back up again. 5 emerges from the back and simply walks past him. He calls out to her, but she doesn't respond. What did I do wrong? Following the credits, we get a little more dialogue. It's another scene out of time. Liam, a child, is confronting Beltboy's childhood friend, the red-headed girl. He tells her that if she's not going to go out with Benny, then she should just stop leading him on and leave him alone. While this kind of language is often used to suggest that boys and girls can't have platonic friendships, or that men are entitled to certain things just for being nice guys, her response suggests that Liam may have a point. Unfortunately, Liam doesn't know that she's just desperate to escape her terrible home, and she's not about to tell him. She tries to blow him off, but he puts his foot down. If she doesn't leave Benny alone, Liam will tell her parents about her plans to run away. I guess we know how that worked out. It's easy to paint Cyclops as the jerk out of the 3, but let's consider that Lanks went through all of this to kidnap a woman against her will, and he only failed because he was too worn out to overpower her when he finally found her. It's easy to say that Lanks cared more about his friends than Cyclops, but Cyclops sacrificed his dignity, and in the end his life, to protect Lanks, despite everything. These men want to be better friends than they are. We see again and again that they're willing to go the distance for each other, but somehow their priorities never quite line up. You don't walk up to an animal like Hart and say, "Take me instead," unless you really love the person that you're trying to protect. You don't confront the mean girls at school unless you think what they're doing to your friend is wrong. In a world where weakness is synonymous with femininity, men cannot ever let their guard down. Predators, bullies, role models, and best friends all teach the same lesson. A man must be made of stone. If he's weak, he's unmanly. And if he's unmanly, he will be found out, called out, victimized, and excluded. So he builds walls because he has to, and in so doing, isolates himself. These men are best friends, but they're all alone. It shouldn't be like this. We'll turn back the clock again to make a different choice. This time we're going all the way back to the beginning. Rodriguez is alive, and he and the boys have only just begun their journey. This time we'll be selecting pain mode. Maybe the boys just need to man up a little bit so that Hart can't push them around. As before, Yogurt masters attacks on the bridge, but this time the boys retreat. He seems to have dropped something. After beating Yogurt for real, the boys scoop up the boomerang that he dropped. This can be traded to Artichoke for a toolbox. Tools! Great. Maybe Rodriguez can use these to work on the car. Alas, the box is full of car decal stickers, not tools. This flagrant display of incompetence is enough to convince Rodriguez that he really shouldn't be letting the boys wander off on their own. He joins as a 4th party member. Rodriguez offers some of Beltboy's damage potential with support skills like a diet Lanks. He never reaches the heights of either character, but once you figure out how to use him, he's really handy to have around. In addition to berating and bossing everyone around, he wields a revolver which can execute a devastating 6 or 12 shot technique that leaves him unable to attack for a few turns as he has to reload afterwards. Searching for gasoline, the gang comes across the trap laid by the engine enthusiasts. Only this time, Dixon's ambush fails because Rodriguez inadvertently stands in his way. This allows Beltboy to snag the jerry can without getting kidnapped. He does, however, stop by the entrance to the enthusiast's hideout to trade the toolbox full of stickers to Ian Iron, the door guard. In return, he receives a pack of trading cards. These can be swapped with Ken Pound for a piece of pink candy. Hey, haven't we seen this before? Beltboy doesn't recognize it, but Reginald does. This is actually the antidote for joy, and it's exceedingly rare. It puts a stop to the mutagenic effects and lets a user have their life back. Beltboy hands it over, and the aging shopkeeper swallows it immediately. In return, he offers to join the party, but Rodriguez refuses, disgusted by the weird little man. Reginald instead promises to repay Beltboy someday. Fueled up and resupplied, the gang fills the tank and hits the road again, but it's not long before trouble catches up to them. It's Gordy Golden, who's a little miffed that a bunch of nobodies took out one of his guys and stole his precious gasoline. Gordy's more dangerous this time around. He slings fireballs like it's going out of style, and since Lanks is the one driving, we're left without his healing. This party lacks the ability to sustain itself for a long fight, and supplies are limited, so it's a matter of trying to burn down his HP while keeping everyone topped up with just enough to avoid getting KO'd. With Gordy defeated, the gang continues on until the ground becomes too soft to drive, and they're forced to continue on foot. They proceed through the mushroom swamp without incident, and this time around spirits are much higher. Rather than gloom and doubt, the mood around the campfire is fun, with Rod telling stories about how he was once a radio DJ, which is likely where he developed his cowboy persona. After dealing with the swamp dwellers, including a few new faces, Rodriguez and company reach the Kegger Krew's hideout. Rod notices vehicles around back and announces that no matter what, they're leaving with one. I'm not sure if it's actually harder or I'm just an idiot, but this time around the barrel section was brutal. A joy mutant named Bubbles wallows in one of the vats, likely the result of one of the Kegger Krew falling in and drowning. It's not a particularly dangerous enemy most of the time, but it will randomly unleash a full party attack that can deal incredible damage. Thanks to the fact that it's soaking in alcohol, it's very vulnerable to fire. There's a substantial reward behind it, 50 magazines and some jerky as a bonus. The meeting with Coldstein doesn't go any better this time around, as Rodriguez accidentally blabs about the girl and sets off another brouhaha. Once he's down, the four make their escape. Rodriguez is able to hotwire a car before anyone has to do any war crimes. Things just seem to go a lot better with the boss around. They park the truck upon reaching the town outside the sports dome. This is where she was spotted, announces Rod. The Sportsters allegedly captured her, so this is the place to be looking. But first, he wants to go and see an old friend and call in a favor. It turns out to be none other than Master Masters, Yogurt's father. The cowboy convinces the martial artist to hand over his art style scroll. This turns out to be a fake. He subsequently convinces him to hand over his true art style scroll, which should sell for a stack of mags. After paying the non-mutated Reginald a visit and finalizing preparations, they make their way toward the sports dome. Hans, one of the Sportster's pet mutants, has gotten free. He's fairly dangerous, but at this point the party has most of their abilities and can easily deal with a single enemy like this. In the back, they get caught eavesdropping, but instead of allowing themselves to be led away, Rodriguez gives the order to attack. 5 Sportsters at once is definitely an occasion to break out the firebombs. Larry Balls is the real threat here, with a chop attack that can hit the entire party. Cyclops' final rush has a low chance to proc the Fallen status, but against 5 enemies, it's likely to shut 1 or 2 of them down. Along with Intimidate and Irritating Poke, it should be possible to CC the group long enough to take out 1 or 2 of them and significantly improve our chances of survival. Rodriguez can barely contain his excitement. With the Sportsters down, the girl should be just behind that door. Instead, they find a dead man and the number 5 painted in blood on the wall. The Sportsters weren't lying. They did have her, but she killed one of them and escaped. It seems like they've hit a dead end, until Beltboy realizes that he's seen this graffiti before. There have been 5s scratched into the walls all around Backwater Olathe. Maybe it's a sign they can follow to get to the girl. With nothing else to go on, they leave the sports dome and head east, spotting another 5 as they venture into the rain-soaked hills. The trail leads them through a network of partially flooded caves inhabited by troglodytes and a bizarre group of cultists who appear to be mutating into sea creatures. Childish drawings stuck to the walls describe a visitor from the stars who is apparently worshipped by these weirdos. Taking a rest, Beltboy begins to ask about the practicality of what they're doing. When they find the girl, where will they take her? How will they keep others away from her? Rod's plan is to stay on the road and keep quiet about the whole thing. There's no discussion of right and wrong this time around. This trip has had its ups and downs, but all Beltboy can really say is that he's having the time of his life. The gang finds a mining charge, which they're able to use to dam up some of the water, allowing them to venture further into the caves. Here, they're confronted by the cult in earnest. The deep ones are surprisingly tough, boasting several water elemental attacks and status effects like poison and paralysis in addition to solid defenses. They resist fire and several CC effects, so taking them down can feel like pulling teeth. Taking a leap of faith down a waterfall, Beltboy finds himself in the deepest part of the caverns, where the water inexplicably reflects the light of unseen stars. Here, he's confronted by the cult's leader, Gar Strings, who pledges to sacrifice him to the Great Old Ones. Beltboy tries to explain that there's a girl now, so he doesn't have to do any of this weird apocalypse stuff anymore, but Gar won't hear it. He's in too deep. Gar has 10,000 hit points and shares his gang's resistances, but despite his incredible battle theme, he's not really all that difficult. Eventually, he calls in backup, first from one of his goons, and second from his reflection as the battle enters its second phase. Once he's dead, the way is clear to exit the caverns. The gang soon picks up the trail again. Another 5, this one still looks fresh. She must be around here somewhere. They split up to find her more easily, but soon discover that they're not the only ones on the hunt. A gang of men in heart masks have descended on the area, and they don't seem inclined to share. Beltboy and Cyclops are able to fight their way through, but Lanks isn't so fortunate. The boys find him with a large group of well-armed Lovelies who have decided to take the poor guy captive. Without Rodriguez, the pair don't stand a chance against a group this size, so they have no choice but to watch Hart's gang drive off with their friend. It takes a bit to find the boss to tell him what happened, and surprisingly, Rodriguez takes responsibility for splitting the group up. He announces that they'll be putting off their search for the girl until they've got their boy back. They follow the convoy to where it's stalled in the mountains. This time there's no skulking around trying to get over the peak. Rodriguez gives the order to just start carving a bloody path directly through. It's Reginald! Making good on his promise, the shopkeeper shows up to help the gang in their time of need. He's most comparable to Lanks, except he runs on TP instead of SP. His attack command is replaced with a TP restoring taunt, which will constantly get him knocked out thanks to his extremely poor defenses. He's certainly the worst character on the roster, but that doesn't mean he's not worth having around. He has a variety of low-cost skills that hit all enemies and a few healing moves to boot. It's mostly just very difficult to keep him upright. The boys forge ahead, entering a tunnel that's been bottlenecking the Lovelies. A cave-in blocks the road, but a maze of service corridors suggests that there may be a way around. Oh no, a bat! This is actually a remix of a song from Mother 3. Noisemaker did an incredible job with this track, and it's hilarious that this is the only time you hear it. Deeper into the tunnels, the gang encounters a mutant named Worm, who is accompanied by a pair of bats. We all know the drill with mutants by now. After the fight, Cyclops reveals that he probably wouldn't have gone after Lanks were it his decision. Rodriguez counters that he's part of the team, and the team sticks together. Maybe he's not such a bad boss after all. The boys emerge from the tunnel and find themselves in a winter wonderland, where they are once again confronted by a vengeful yogurt masters. Rodriguez offers to give him the true art style scroll in exchange for his aid. Yogurt agrees and becomes the 6th member of the party. Yogurt Masters is very powerful. His primary mechanic is switching between 3 stances that can give him counterattacks, regenerate his health, or recover SP. He's also capable of dishing out disabling kicks or powerful fireball attacks. These fireball attacks allow Yogurt to melt the ice blocking the way forward to Shiver City, which has just been plundered by the Lovely Boys. After defeating another mutated local, the gang catches up to Lud, Richie, and Biggie, who are trying to deactivate the snow cannon responsible for the climate around here. It's a difficult fight, as the Lovelies will use the cannon to freeze our party members solid, making it difficult to maintain control of the battle. Once they've destroyed the local economy and snagged the keys to a truck, the boys are once again on the road. Soon, their truck catches up to the convoy, and Beltboy begins leaping from truck to truck in search of Lanks. A few Lovelies climb out to fight them Road Warrior style, but they are no match for the Bullet Waster and his friends. They catch up to Lanks just in time to stop Craig from attacking him, but the showdown is interrupted by the sound of a trumpet. What the hell? The truck crashes, allowing Craig to escape, but that's alright. Everyone's fine, including Lanks, who reports that the gang was too busy moving to pay him any mind. Outside, they reunite with Yogurt and Rodriguez. It seems like everyone survived the wreck. Now it's time to beat some ass. We've seen this area before. It's a little collection of shops just before the final showdown. If we push a rock aside, we can find a secret passage heading down toward an optional super boss. This is the hardest rider, and I am not good enough at this game to beat him on the Rodriguez route. He's encountered in a globe of death and wields a submachine gun. His motorcycle makes mirror images that put out massive amounts of damage as he swaps between 3 phases, regenerating the entire time. If you do manage to take him down, he yields a staggering 22,000 XP and Beltboy's ultimate armor, the biker jacket. Resting before the final fight, Lanks reveals that the Lovelies are likely following the same trail of 5s that Beltboy discovered. That would certainly explain a few things. Beltboy gets a chance to chat with his buddies here. Cyclops lets his guard down a bit and reassures him that he does care about the others despite his gruff attitude. Lanks apologizes for driving Beltboy and the red-haired girl apart. He shouldn't have assumed the worst, he says. Beltboy assures him that all is forgiven and tells him to stop worrying about the past. Rodriguez mentions what he really wants, aside from the obvious. It's family. He reveals that he once had a wife, but failed when she surprised him with a pregnancy. That kind of estrangement is a running theme. Yogurt hates his father, and Reginald is searching for a son he long ago lost contact with, a situation that may have something to do with his former joy addiction. They're all pinning their hopes on this girl. Whoever she is, maybe she can make up for all their failure and misfortune. Shortly thereafter, the gang reaches the end of the road, and there are very few Lovelies left to stand in their way. It isn't long before they're face to face with Hart and what's left of his boys. This is perfect for Rodriguez. It's one final showdown for the girl. What more could a cowboy want? Hart answers his challenge. You want to fight me? I guess at this point, that's all men can do. What we were made to do. It's pure nihilism. Hart refuses any responsibility for his actions, saying that he's simply behaving in the way that men were meant to behave, that the destruction and misery that he and his gang have been dumping on everyone they come across is just boys being boys, doing what comes naturally to them, that there's nothing greater they could achieve. Goodbye Baby swells in the background, a sure sign that a Lisa character is about to make a bad decision. It's a blowout, but the Lovelies never stood a chance. One by one, bodies hit the floor until only Hart remains. They don't stay down, however. In their last moments, they mutate and rise again, but it still isn't enough. Driven into a corner, Hart succumbs to the joy and mutates as well. Finally, it's over. The Lovelies have been killed to a man, but victory came at high cost. Battered and bleeding, Rodriguez's gang weakly laughs in triumph. This is the end of the road. Thanks for all the fun, guys. The girl emerges from the ruins and picks her way past the carnage. Beltboy calls out for help, but she tells him that from where she's standing, there's no difference between him and the Lovelies. She makes her way out into the wasteland, leaving them all to die. But this was supposed to be the S route. Didn't we do everything right? Where's our happy ending? Wiping out the Deep Ones and the Lovelies might improve life in Backwater Olathe for a while, but there's a difference between killing Hart and rejecting his rancid philosophy. Despite all their posturing, Rodriguez's gang came here for the same reason he did. It was hardly any different than Cyclops' route. Even Lanks, who seemed to grow so much, went from being the only person willing to think of the girl's feelings to trying to capture her by force, becoming no better than the people who had hurt him. So let's wind the clock back one more time, all the way to the beginning. Rodriguez's gang has heard that a girl has been spotted in Backwater Olathe. Beltboy forgot to fill up the tank. They get captured by the engine enthusiasts. They escape. Hart cuts Rodriguez's head off. They get captured by the Lovelies. Craig does something very bad to Lanks. Beltboy beats Craig to death. They escape into the swamp. They burn down the Kegger Krew's hideout. They enter the Sports Dome tournament. We've seen this all before. This time, as they wait in their room before the match, Beltboy doesn't try to reconcile with his friends. What would be the point? They've never opened up to each other before. They've been together since they were kids, but they've always kept each other at arm's length. So they pass the time before their match in uncomfortable silence. There's no joy this time. The three win each match on their own merits. They fight the Sports King, and then Hart shows up and kills him. Hart tells the boys that one will be killed, one will be taken, and one will be spared. Before he can get too far into his speech, Cyclops charges him, but is knocked out by a single punch from Sawyer. On Hart's orders, Wang splashes gasoline over the fallen charger and lights him up. The Lovelies decide to take Lanks. Beltboy starts to put up a fight until Lud shoots him in the knee. He collapses as they leave and Clyde's body burns. Beltboy awakens back inside, where he learns that Tanner, Texas has taken over the sports dome. He's had his men patch Beltboy's leg up and offers him a car. Benny's about to give up hope until Tanner reminds him that Lanks is still out there, and if the Lovelies find the girl, they're going to tear her to shreds. With nothing left to lose, he agrees, heading out through the arena, where he hears a terrible sound behind him. Clyde's voice. Against all odds, Cyclops survived being lit on fire and left to burn. He's in horrible shape, but there's no time to get help. He joins Beltboy and the two make the drive into the mountains. The convoy is big and slow. The pair decide that it will be faster to go around by climbing the mountain. They fight their way past stray lovelies, wolves, deer, and a vengeful yogurt masters, stopping only for a short rest and a little gallows humor. They reach the phony neighborhood and descend through the joy lab beneath it. Along the way, the pressure starts finally getting to Beltboy, who is beset with visions of Rodriguez's severed head and his childhood friend. We've seen how it's possible for the boys to become joy mutants, and that it's possible to fight these three mutants depending on the route we're on. For the most part, they're fairly typical mutant battles, except that all three use a particular move, Familiar Cry. This attack inflicts the depression and crying statuses. Amy, the mutant guarding the exit in the depths of the lab, is the only other enemy that uses it. Beltboy doesn't realize it, but he knew this woman. This was his childhood friend, Amy, the red-headed girl. Once the mutant is put down, they emerge from the tunnels to find that they've caught up with the front of the convoy. They take down another three lovelies and head for the back of their truck. But Clyde is having trouble keeping up. His burns are finally catching up to him. Once inside, he collapses and tells Beltboy that he won't be going any further. This is the end of the line. Amid the pile of Wally Burger bags that passes for a deathbed, he apologizes for everything. He admits that Beltboy was right, that girls aren't everything, and that he should have been a better friend. Benny forgives him, and Clyde gives up the ghost. Before long, the engine starts up. Beltboy heads topside and leaps from truck to truck, mowing down lovelies as he searches for Lanks. He's confronted by Hart, but the sound of a trumpet and the sight of a wall of mutants interrupts their showdown. The convoy crashes. Beltboy awakens to find that he's mysteriously survived. He picks his way through the carnage and encounters three of the remaining lovelies, who run straight into his bullets. Lanks wasn't in the wreck. He must be in this truck. Benny. This is all my fault. Don't be a wimp. I thought guys were supposed to be tough. We still have a chance. Rodriguez was right. I only get in the way. I screwed up everything again, didn't I? I don't mean to be this stupid. I just want to keep being friends with you, so please. I'm sorry. Faced with the terror and shame of being the Lovelies' prisoner again, and knowing full well what they had in store, Liam took the only escape that was left to him. Benny sinks to the floor, sobbing out apologies to his corpse. Alone, he presses on, intent on bringing justice to Hart. There's one final campsite here, one last opportunity to rest. Beltboy drinks to his fallen friends, haunted by a vision of Amy that seems to mock him as he decides that even though they're gone, they'll always be with him. With his preparations complete, Beltboy makes his way into the ruins for the final showdown. He interrupts Hart's posturing by informing him that he's going to die. Hart sicks his men on him, but Beltboy's too quick on the draw. In a flash, they're all dead, and only the 2 men remain. The battle begins impossibly with Liam and Clyde in the party. They may be dead and gone, but they're here in spirit, giving Beltboy all the advantage he needs to take on the leader of the Lovelies. This is one of the hardest versions of this fight. Beltboy does not have the endurance to deal with Hart's constant high-damage attacks, and it can be a struggle to find opportunities to dish out damage in between gulping down jerky and cola. Eventually, Hart mutates, dispelling the phantom party members in the process. Benny keeps up the offensive, until at last, Hart goes down. But it came at a cost. Benny's in bad shape, bleeding out where Hart clawed his gut open. He staggers into the abandoned building where Five has been hiding and collapses on the floor. I need a friend. Five hesitates. That was not what she was expecting to hear. We fade to black as she cautiously steps forward to help him. In every other route, the characters pursue the typical macho power fantasy to defeat Hart and perhaps unwittingly replace him. Every step they take is a step in the wrong direction, because their goal was rotten from the start. No better than what Hart or any other wasteland lunatic was after. Sure, they might be nicer and more relatable people, but given what they have planned for the girl, how much of that relatability comes from the fact that these are our point-of-view characters? That realization is what saves Beltboy in the end. Five is a person, not a thing, and this is the only ending where whoever meets her doesn't try to make her into a captive, a victim, or an unwilling savior. We all know Brad. We all know the story of the loner struggling through a world where he doesn't belong. Here, we see him deconstructed. Brad is a product of violence and neglect, of the expectations and stereotypes forced on men that deny them the right to emotional authenticity. It is not hard to see the dark roads that this isolation leads people down. There are entire industries built around monetizing this kind of loneliness, around selling men the idea that they're only alone because they're not alpha enough, that all the happiness they deserve is being hoarded or stolen by some other group. Depression is a never-ending revenue stream for the huckster economy. But look beyond the scam artists and you see the same ideas echoed everywhere throughout history. At some point, our species went ahead and decided that it was okay, even honorable, for men to go off and kill and die in war. It's what they were made for. These die-hard stereotypes paint them as inherently violent and incapable of feeling any emotion other than anger. And of course, women were forcibly stamped into the other side of the coin, designated as victims, weak and hysterically emotional. Beltboy and his friends didn't deserve what happened to them, but on every other route they failed to learn the game's lesson. It's only here, after he's been through hell, that any of these men are able to let their guard down, reach out to Five, and attempt a reconciliation. Here, finally, we see the spark of hope alluded to in the title. Maybe this is what saving the world looks like. We're treated to another post-credit conversation. Five and Beltboy are having a chat as she fixes him up. She's glad to meet somebody sane for once, but she needs help. Some of the other women are still out there somewhere, and she aims to find them. This is the canonical ending of the game. In 2020, a sequel titled Lisa the Hopeless was announced, this time directed by developer Callan 2009 with a small team working alongside him. They reportedly have Taco Salad's blessing and hands-off guidance, and they'll be picking up exactly where this ending leaves off, with Beltboy and Five teaming up for their next journey. As with all fan games, development can be slow and uncertain, but there have been several promising updates on their Discord. Lisa the Hopeful is available for free on itch.io in the link provided in the description. If you want more Lisa, Painful and Joyful just released a definitive edition on PC and console. If you're absolutely fiending for more, I can heartily recommend Pointless and Timeless, and there are still many, many other fan games to discover. The fan community for the Lisa series has consistently been prolifically creative, and it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. Before we go, I'd like to say thank you to all the channel patrons. Patreon has allowed me to make this into a full-time job, and I'm incredibly grateful for all the support. If you'd like to get in on our patron-only Discord and streams, head over to patreon.com/worm_girl. If not, thank you for watching, and you can catch VODs of the patron streams on my second channel. Links in the description. Special thanks to Cyan, Tibby Gaycat Pizza Girl, Alexis Ulloa Nunez, Bloody M, Timothy Gallagher, Murch, Lumpy Oats, Evelyn Heterodyne, Best Tiger, DeDennis13, 42 Flying Fish, Josh Bays, Matthew Luchak, Ian Cook, Aradia Vitalia Anouk, Francho, AJ, Canyon, Arencios, Arnold Schwarzenwalker, Pandaroo, Bleep, Moonly Tears, Floranta Dela Cruz, No Man 2000, PH, Mothman, Masked Reader, Hyrax Syriacus, Logan Morgangard, Aaron EB, Stev, Guro, Shatan, Vrampter, River, Why do they call it oven when you in the cold food out hot eat the food? Snoogmar, Valeria, Charles, Peter Chauvin, Thomas Marinelli, Brian Smith, Nicholas Hale, Chris Rovers, William Nelson, Emil Vieskens, Nina Wednesdays, Blight, Soup Clown, Ty Perry, A Fox, Mix Ashes, I am Interface 0101, a Ghoul, a Husk, maybe even Cosmic Goo, I am both eternal and ephemeral, Squinty Face, Rezok, Brian Hahn, James Moore, Cerberus 44, Kegger Krew, Galka Firestorm, Neophyte, Boops, Vivia Doati, Inez, Ano, Babano, Banana Fana, Fafana, Fee, Fi, Mamano, Ano, The Raff, Rainfrux, A Noob in Disguise, The Powers That Be, Sean Kerner, Michael Dennis Martin, Jim Dark Magic, Rythul, Ad, Dusk, Farsi, Green, Samuel, Memento Mori, Galbatrix, AI Prototype Mark 6, Kroniki, 1010010101, Alex Smith, Aria Midnight, Bethany Pretty, Eric Melander, Gravedigger Mordecai, Key Orden, Ninja Cakes, Sean Wells, and the Sovereign Syocrat.